So this is the last week of the Advent season, which is that season where we're focusing our attention on the birth of the Christ that we knew as Jesus, but also the awakening to the Christ within each one of us. Hopefully, we do that all year long, but we kind of put it on steroids in December to keep our mind focused on the power, the presence that dwells within each one of us. That was what Jesus' life demonstrated for us. He awoke to that truth of his spiritual nature, and then he demonstrated it and called us to live it as well. And so this month, we've been walking through this season using the prayer of St. Francis, which I think is a wonderful teaching tool for awakening to the Christ within and how to do that. We started early on with the first part of the prayer up here on the screen. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, let me sow pardon. Where there's doubt, let me sow faith. And where there is despair, let me sow hope. We're going to take a look at the next two lines today. Where there is darkness, let me sow light. And where there is sadness, let me sow joy. It's an opportunity for us to look at, first of all, darkness and how we interpret darkness in our life. Just think about that for a minute. How would you know you're in darkness? How do you know you're in darkness? Anybody want to holler something out? You're depressed, low energy, no excitement for life. Say again. Cranky. Cranky. That's kind of a dark energy, isn't it? And another word that I think we associate with darkness is fear. And more and more I have come to look at the ego as that's its dominant energy. It's always concerned, at least, about what's going on around it and what could harm it. Now, there's going to be some legitimate reasons to fear, and our brain is geared to pay attention to those moments. Not with the saber-toothed tiger anymore running after us, but, crossing the street and almost getting hit by a car, you jump. Walking down a path, you see a snake, you jump. But I would say for the most part, our fear is working according to error thinking. We've spent our life watching the world outside of ourselves, and whenever something threatens our well-being, our ego, we become afraid. And we hold on to that fear, and we sink it down into our consciousness, and it just tends to run in the background. It could be, the status of our money, or the status of our body, or the status of our relationships. And it's easy to get caught up in that fear and then just let it dominate. Where there is darkness, let me sow light. Well, guess what? The brain is not helping at all in this. It actually has a negativity bias. I heard a TED Talk recently by Dr. Amit Sood. When he came from India to the United States, his plan was to study medicine to work on healing cancer. But when he got to America, his vision of America was, it's like coming to Disneyland. The entire country is at Disneyland, and all things are good all the time. But he discovered that even in the land of Disneyland, there are people in fear, a lot of them. And he could not figure out why we weren't happy when we had all that we had. So he made that the study of medicine and tried to figure out why the brain has this propensity to be unhappy. And one of the things that he discovered was that the mind is built with a negativity bias, and that's usually to protect itself. But he also, his own experience was that he said, I have personally had many medical problems. I've had several heart attacks, I've had multiple strokes, I've had several cancers, and I nearly died many times, all in my head. None of this actually happened. I'm actually imagining all of these illnesses. The brain is trying to protect itself. It's looking to see what could take its well-being away. Assume the worst. All based on falsehoods, or what we call in Unity, error thinking. Thinking not based on spiritual truth. So darkness can feel like fear, and darkness can also feel like confusion. Where am I? Where am I going? What's happening? Another thing that Dr. Sood said was that 50 to 80% of our day, our brain is reviewing our life. That's a lot of our day devoted to reviewing our life. And mostly what it's reviewing is what is not done or what is going wrong. Can you hear the ego playing out in that? He said that we have 150 open files in our mind at any given time that we're trying to solve. And can you understand that when our mind is that cluttered, we really have no idea where we are, where we're going, how we're going to get out of this mess? And then the more time we spend in that clutter, the easier it is to fall into kind of a chronic state of anxiety or depression or ADD. Trying to protect ourselves, but in the process, we wind up in this dark room, we can't find our way out, and it's not like you walked in and turned on a dark switch. There is no dark switch. There is no dark power. Remember, only one presence and one power, the all-loving goodness of God. So when we're in that darkness, that dark room, it's because we've turned away from the light and toward those mistaken ideas about what's happening. We're using our 5 physical senses to create emergencies or threats that aren't necessarily there. And the fear and the confusion working together is really a product of our thinking. It's our third principle, which says that we create our life experience through our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs. Sadness runs in the same family as darkness, and it's usually based on how we feel about ourselves. Imperfect, not able, I'm a failure, how do I compare to others? Not enough, things not going the way that we want them to. And that sadness is also one of those heavier energies. We see sad people with a pouting face chronically, or a chip on their shoulder chronically. We see sadness in ourselves when we have a hard time being friendly to people, when our first response is cynical. I was talking to someone on the phone recently that I hadn't talked with for a while, but am close to, and sadly, was not surprised that everything that I brought up as conversation, they had a negative response to, a cynical response to. I mean, it was almost comical if it weren't so sad that this person was so sad about everything in life. You know, it's the Eeyore complex. And I just thought, I'd like to think that there's something I could say here, but knowing this person, they will just work to contradict me. It's like, almost like a game, you know? So we can move into that state of sadness and feel stuck there, just like we're stuck in the dark. And when we get so miserable about it, then we seek others who are of like mind, who are also sad. We co-miserate, right? Misery loves company. But all that does is deepen and strengthen that lower energy and take us further and further from our joy. Are you burned out right now? Do you love hearing this story? Well, Esther Hicks has a point of view around this. She says a bunch of weak people, up here on the screen, a bunch of weak people, even in numbers, aren't strong. Get a whole bunch of confused people together and see how much clarity comes out of it. In other words, you just can't add one more confused person to the pot and expect to get any more clarity. One standing outside of the confused group who is clear is more powerful than 1,000,000 who are confused. One clear person, more powerful than 1,000,000 confused people. So, how do we step outside of that darkness, that sadness, the same way we got into it? With new thoughts, practicing new thoughts. And it doesn't hurt to realize what you're working with in the brain, what its bias is, where it tends to go, so that you can be ready rather than compound it by thinking more sad thoughts because it's sad and it's trying to protect you, rather than compound it with a bunch of error thinking, like I'm not enough to protect myself, there's not enough to provide my needs. We can choose different thoughts. It's within your power, no matter how depressed you are, you can choose a new thought. You just have to care about how you feel. Sometimes we're so into the sadness and the darkness, we've given up caring. We've resigned ourselves to the fact. So I'm asking you to start caring how you feel in any given moment and realize I can choose something different than this. I don't have to think this way. I don't have to think this way. Will you say that with me? I don't have to think this way. Next time you catch yourself on that downhill slide, just remind yourself, I don't have to think this way. I can choose something else. There's a scripture in 1 John that says, God is light, and in him is no darkness. What does light mean to you in that statement? God is light. What does light mean to you? A new direction. Say again. Purity. Positive. Hope, love, joy, truth. I think, when I think of light, when we're describing God as light, one of the ways that I think about it is the presence. We talk about the omnipresence of light, omnipresence of God. So, first of all, we're nowhere ever out of the light. It's always here. No matter how dark it looks, no matter how sad we feel, there is also light here. In God, there is no darkness, and God is in me. I'm an expression of that light. And what does that mean? One of the ways that I look at light is that feeling of we call it substance. Light is like an energy, right? And that energy is what forms this entire universe, including my daily bread. So if you're in sadness or darkness because you don't have enough, remind yourself you're in the light. The light is everywhere present, and I can form and fashion this light into my daily bread, but not with thoughts of sadness or darkness. It's thoughts that God is light, and in him there is no darkness. It's also, for me, a version of, that light bulb over the head, having an idea of light. That's probably the primary way that I think of light as God. And that wisdom is always present no matter how confused you feel in the moment. At the same time, there is a divine idea in you that will take you to another level, that will point you in the right direction. If you trust it, if you look for it, if you believe and allow it, there is light. When we stay in the darkness and we hold the fear that I don't know the answer, I can't find my way out of this, that is a lower, slower energy that drops you out of the stream of light. It's not like it's gone, it's just that you're unavailable to it in your consciousness. So choose ideas of light that will help raise your energy and put you back in sync with that divine mind that has all the answers that you're looking for. That's the kind of light that we want to call on when we are around people who are in darkness or in sadness. Joel Goldsmith wrote a bunch of books, one called The Art of Spiritual Healing. And he said, some years ago in Honolulu, a young woman in one of our classes who was taking a bus home had her attention attracted to a man at the rear of the bus. He was being very boisterous and obscene in his language. She immediately began to realize, become conscious of, God manifest as individual being. She began to realize God manifest as individual being. What is that individual being? It's the Christ in us, the Spirit of who we are. That each individual includes all that God is. And that individual being has only the qualities of God. She did not treat the man. She did not know the truth about the man or the condition. She began with herself, knowing that truth. I am the qualities of God. She began with herself, and finally, he came over and said, "Thank you, miss, for praying for me. I'm all right now." What did she do? She began realizing God was manifest as individual being. That's all she knew. That's all she saw. That's all she felt in her being. That's how we get into the light, is to turn away from the problem and toward that presence of light within us, holding that as a knowingness that this is all there is in truth. And that is what reaches out and touches those around us. That is what Jesus expressed as, so that he could just be in the presence of people and they could be turned into light. So this explanation of how we use this light is what Jesus, I think, was trying to say in the book of Luke. Up here on the screen, he said, "Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body is also full of light. But when they're unhealthy, your body is also full of darkness." Your eye, how you see things, determines whether you've got some light in your life or not. What are you looking at? What are you looking for? What are you being in consciousness? The light or the darkness? It determines how your entire life experience plays itself out. So our work is to see into the spiritual dimension first, look past the circumstances, and see that there is power here, there is wisdom, there is love, there is creativity, there is life. All those divine qualities of God we think of and become. It raises us up into that higher frequency where Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you by turning your thoughts towards light. It raises you above the impurities, the illnesses, the fears, and it allows you to receive the goodness of God. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free, Jesus said. So there's a few ways that we can practice moving from darkness to light, from sadness to joy. One of the things is we talk about here often is don't focus on the problem or what's causing the problem, but focus on what you prefer or desire instead until you can feel the goodness of that, the anticipation of that, the joy of that. We also can notice anytime we're in a negative emotion to remind ourselves, I can think on anything other than this problem. Anything that feels better, that's where I'm headed. Anything that feels better. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to necessarily be the solution to your problem. It can just be, I am so happy that the sky is blue today. I am so happy that Christmas is almost here. What is it that feels better to you that you can move into? That's what will align you with your good. We sing a song that Kim Char wrote, which is based on Philippians chapter 4 up here on the screen. Whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's pleasing or commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think on these things. They knew the power of our thoughts when Paul wrote this. There's a thing that you should know about your brain, that within 2 seconds of engaging with someone, you are already judging whether this person is trustworthy, competent, aggressive, likable, attractive. Within 2 seconds, you have determined that. Know that about your brain, so that when you know you're about to approach someone, especially those that you struggle with, decide in advance, I'm going to practice a kind attention towards this person. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you feel love. Just think of what that energy will do to that interaction. Whether it's a stranger or someone you don't like, start off before you even touch the energy field, deciding what the energy field will be. Otherwise, your ego will take over. Before you get out of bed in the morning, can you just bring to mind 3 or 4 or 5 people that you appreciate? Take them one at a time, sit with their face for a minute, and imagine what it is that you appreciate about them. Experience the goodness of them. And realize that whatever makes me happy, I want to be for you. Look for that which makes you happy. Look towards those people, those situations that bring you joy, and move there before the negativity can take over. Joy comes when you regularly give your light away. It can be done. When was the last time you gave your joy away? Just think about that for a minute. It can be done. I mean, a lot of us might struggle with, how do I do that? I don't just go around telling jokes to people. What can I do to be the light or to be joy? Here's a story from Wayne Dyer. He said, recently, I happened to be in a park at night where a large collection of young people were gathered for a high school graduation celebration. It became apparent that drinking and drug use were taking their toll on the young adults. Soon the profanity and threats of physical fighting won out, and the young people were squaring off to do battle. I thought of this line from the St. Francis prayer. I saw darkness in the form of impurity everywhere, running rampant. So I began to walk into the center of this burgeoning melee, consciously radiating thoughts of light, saying nothing, but just surrounding the entire commotion with light. In a matter of moments, the young people began to disperse, and the violent threats subsided. It was clear to me that it was possible to send pure, loving light into this low energy, and that it impacted the young people without them even being aware of what I was doing. You can access the purity of your soul, bringing your senior partner's unconditional, loving light, loving, pure light to the presence of any impurity. By radiating that kind of pure light outward, you can affect those around you. Just holding thoughts of light, visualizing it in your mind as everywhere present, and deciding the nature of that light as love, as peace, as cooperation, as harmony, as strength. Whatever is needed in that moment, hold that in your consciousness. We also find our joy in sadness when we decide, I'm not going to resist what is right now. I'm going to allow what is, but I'm also going to look forward to what can be. Resistance is an absolute trap for darkness and holds you to whatever negative energy you're already in. Keep in mind who and what your true source is, that nothing and no one can stand between me and my good. Don't resist, allow what is, and then look forward to what can be. Keep your thoughts focused on the things that matter to you most, not the things that won't even be in your life a year from now or 5 years from now, but the things that have value to you. And one of the things Dr. Sood suggested was that when you come home, before you go into the house, imagine who it is you're going to interact with inside the house and pretend like you haven't seen them in a month. Even if it was just this morning, pretend like you haven't seen them in a month so that when you come through the door and you see them, you're really interested in them. And you're really interested in what interests them. That's a way to move out of darkness into joy and love and gratitude. That's when you really start to realize how important your loved ones are and how precious your time is with them. We're not going to go chase light, we're going to make way for light, and we do that with our thoughts and our feelings. It's mostly our job to just simply know who we are to begin with as a being of light. That great poet from centuries ago, his name was Hafiz, he said, up here on the screen, he said, I wish I could show you when you're lonely or in darkness the astonishing light of your own being. Right now, you are an astonishing light. that's waiting to shine. And it's what Jesus said, you're the light of the world, but don't put a basket over it. We're supposed to reveal it, to let our light shine. We do that by leaning into those thoughts that feel good. You have the ability to choose how you feel about anything. Anything that's going on in your life, you have the ability to choose how you feel about this. And it doesn't have to be based on what you see with your eyes, but what the spiritual dimension all around you is calling for. Begin to train your vibration toward love and appreciation. Start with the easy stuff. Bill was out on the front lawn with his dog this morning, and I immediately went, oh! Go there. That's an easy place to start. Something that you love, think of until you feel it. And the more you do that, the easier it will be to do that towards things that you don't necessarily or easily like in your life, because you're training your vibration to that energy of love. And at that point, you start to become a natural uplifter for others. I'm going to finish with one last story that I think I might have shared in the last couple of years, but it's so good, I had to do it again. I won't give you the whole version, but Elizabeth Gilbert is the author of Eat, Pray, Love. Eat, Pray, Love. And she was in New York City, and she was taking a bus. Here's another story on a bus across town, and it was a rotten weather day, and traffic was absolutely stacked, and nobody was going anywhere. And she said the energy in that bus was just palpable. There was anger, there was frustration, there was misery, there was sadness. You could basically touch it. And she said that the bus driver got on the intercom and he said, folks, I know you've had a rough day and you're frustrated and I can't do anything about the weather or the traffic, but here's what I can do. As each one of you gets off the bus, I will reach out my hand to you. And as you walk by, drop your troubles into the palm of my hand, okay? Don't take your problems home to your families tonight. Just leave them with me. My route goes right by the Hudson River, and when I drive by there later, I will open the window and throw those troubles into the water. And immediately, the bus turned to light. The people turned to light. They were smiling, they were laughing, they were engaging with each other, completely different group of people. Because he had an idea of light, he had a desire to be light. And so he said the exiting commuters placed their hand just above his and mimed the gesture of dropping something into his palm. And the driver repeated this same lovely ritual at the next stop and the next, all the way to the river. There are times when everything seems cloaked in darkness. But what if you are the light?